Well, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today I am lucky to have Ryan Griggs as my guest. He is the founder of the Regenaissance. Ryan, thanks for joining. I appreciate you being here. Why don't you take a minute and kind of introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course.
So, like you mentioned, I'm the founder of the Regenaissance, and I initially started that out as an apparel brand, and the whole idea had been really just educational focused, and pertaining to agriculture. And essentially, the whole gist is just reconnecting us back to our food, as the 99% of the population essentially does not have a relationship with a farmer. Most have never gone to a farm. Everyone, not everyone, most have bought their food from a grocery store their whole lives. I was one of those people for so long. I'm 31 now, and I did not meet a farmer until I was 27. But that didn't, the whole reason that happened was the fact that I had a lot of health things happen to my family, and that was my massive wake-up call. And that's the sad thing about America is that happens to a lot of Americans too, to where there's something tragic that happens and that forces you to wake up essentially. And for me, it was a very slow but also quick at the same time boiling pot of water, the frog analogy essentially, to where back in 2018 my mom's health really began to decline. Fast forward to 2020, right as the pandemic started, I found out my older brother had stage 3 colon cancer, and so both of those things were ongoing. And again, at that time I was so far removed from agriculture. I come from a tech background. Even though I'm from Southern Indiana and surrounded by cornfields, I think about the fact that there's fifth and sixth, seventh generational farmers, but there's also fifth, sixth, and seventh generational families that have been that far removed from agriculture. And I would probably say I'm the fourth generation that's removed from my food. But yeah, just through all the family things, watching my brother since she passed away through cancer, eventually my mother passing away too, my own health, hell of a journey. I was also vegan for 2.5 years. So a lot just happened in culmination of all that to where it forced me to think about everything. And then this was now February of 2022. I found out about regenerative agriculture. I had never heard of that word. And so that was kind of my light bulb moment of realizing how disconnected I'd been from my food. And so that kind of just went heads deep into all of that. Started just reading a lot of the history. I'm wearing a Make Milk Raw Again hat because then I also realized how much we've been lied to on things like raw milk, and just realizing how screwed the farmers and ranchers have been getting over for so long, and how most of us just aren't aware. Because I said education too. I should say raising awareness in education because education is important, but the whole raising awareness aspect is so crucial because to me, if that doesn't happen, then they won't care to educate themselves. And so, again, when I started this as an apparel brand, you would go to my social media and you would have not expected it to be an apparel brand because it was all just educational focus. And now I've essentially flipped it on its head to where it's a media company that has apparel because I also have a podcast to where I talk to farmers and ranchers and all the other folks in the ag space to really help paint the full picture. I know I really glossed over my personal story because crazy enough, my mom actually ended up passing away on the same day I launched my brand. This was May 2023. And so just through all of that, I knew obviously it was very challenging. It's now 2025, and I would say this is the first year to where I'm actually, I guess, getting back on my feet for everything. But just through all of that, actually working on a farm myself, making me realize that if we want to have our food system change to where we want it to be, you have to make the decisions now because it takes decades essentially for it to really come to fruition. Because a lot of things that we're experiencing now, that this has been going on for a very long time. When you think of the whole Earl Butts Get Bigger Go Out is essentially that's from the 70s. And so it's now 2025, and there's a lot that needs to be done, a lot of education that needs to be had. Because to me, a lot of these problems too, it's the fact that the whole knowledge is power and the fact that there's been a lack of that knowledge. And so all these government institutions, the NGOs, other powerful entities essentially know they can take advantage of these folks. And that continues to happen. But fortunately, more and more people are waking up, and it seems more people are starting to support actual farmers and ranchers. And as the Mod family happened, that was the case that really took wind to where it finally made its way to Secretary of Agriculture, and she was able to drop the case. So there's a lot.
That was over fence line, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
just absolutely ridiculous.
A
They
fence
were
line that had
not
been there for 50 plus years, something like that.
since the 1910s. And
Okay.
so before we hit record, I was actually at this conference 2 weeks ago and they were there. So it's the Mod family. They are in South Dakota, this ranching family, and it's been in the husband side of the family since I believe the 1910s. And then all of a sudden they had this anonymous complaint from a hunter last year stating that their fence line was overbearing because on the other side it's the National Forest Service. And within 90 days, the couple were placed under a gag order to where they couldn't talk to one another about the case. They were pretty much intimidated in the fact that they might have their guns taken away. They were trying to have CPS take their children away. They were facing 10 years in prison each, $250,000 in fines each. And again, this is all for just an anonymous complaint. They have no idea who this is from. They've throughout this whole entire time they've had the ranch, they've done all the documents and everything correctly. They've never done anything wrong.
Right.
When you talk to the local community, they're just an amazing family that, just the typical ranching family, American ranching family that just wants to provide good food for their family and for their community while also just being the steward to their land. And that's what these institutions hate. And so they went through hell through all of that. It was not looking too promising, actually. Fortunately, it really caught wind online. There's ranchers like Shad Sullivan to where in the back end we're just really trying to help as much as they could spread the message online and just to other folks in the ag space. And that was really working to where then it eventually made its way to Donald Trump and the Secretary of Ag, Brooke Rollins, and she essentially was able to dismiss the case. But just hearing them talk, and then the thing that will always make me irate, because I'll never forget it until the day I die, was they talked, and then we all applauded and whatnot, and they actually gave them an award. And as they were taking a picture, their kids came up, and the whole time they were standing up there, the kids were just looking up at their parents, just thrilled. They they absolutely adore their parents. And to me, thinking the fact that they tried to take their kids away
Right.
above all else is just so sickening. And that's why I have this, is the fact that I continue to meet incredible ranchers and farmers every day. And so many have gotten attacked left and right. And so it really is the power to the people to have to back them up, support them, and push back because it works. And so I know I just kind of went on a long-winded tangent, but
All right.
that's essentially why I have all of this. It's the fact that
Sure.
for so long, the powers that be have been able to get away with whatever they want, whether it be making raw milk illegal and gaslighting the public or doing something like this. But to me, um, it's finally slowly making its way back to where we're actually, as Americans, are really helping drive change.
So you have a big, like your hat says, right? Make milk raw again, and you have on your page and different things that I've seen from you where you put some focus into raw milk advocacy. So I'm not, I guess I wouldn't be as invested in it as you are in terms of the mission. I don't really drink a whole lot to begin with, but from my understanding is that, okay, years and years ago, when we didn't have the infrastructure set up, we didn't have refrigeration, we didn't have all of these different things on a farm that would help it be cleaner from the source. So then pasteurization was something that was essentially required to make it safe. But now, all these years later, we have the systems put in place to make it safer, to make it
Yeah.
where we can take it right, from the farm, get it bottled, and then you and I as consumers can enjoy it, in milk or cheese or whatever. Um, yeah. So what you probably speak to that a little bit because I have very little knowledge of it. That's like what I just said is all that I really know on that side of things.
Yeah. So raw milk is a very, very polarizing topic. And it's always interesting reading online because people always talk about how raw milk in the 1800s were just mass killing people, especially in the cities, which was technically true, but the context is always missing. And this is always my problem with how we just talk overall, just black and white thinking and always dismiss the context. So in the 1800s, as the Industrial Revolution was happening, you had these cities like New York City was propping up. And like you were mentioning, there's no refrigeration, there's no electricity, there's no cars. You're still in horse and buggy. So you think about in the actual the roads filled with horse shit, and
Right.
you have flies and all kinds of rampant diseases, very unsanitary. And then you take the fact that the War of 1812 ended, and so the British cut off our whiskey supply. And so New York City had 5 to 7,000 whiskey distilleries prop up. And as that was going on, the supply and demand obviously was changing. And so a lot of these distilleries, to try to make additional money, they attached cows to the back of their distilleries and they started selling swill milk because they knew if they fed these cattle the leftover grains, it would up their milk production and they could just start mass selling that out to these growing cities. And so you can even go back and look at the images they had. They were just in a concrete jungle, no grass, no sunlight. They would literally milk them even when they were sick. They put them in harnesses and then they would feed them, the leftover distillery grains. And it worked to where it really upped their production. But then they started producing this blue pus-filled milk called swill milk. And so they would sell that to the community. And of course, that's going to kill people. And so that's essentially what happened. And that was one of the reasons why they're really forcing pasteurization, because I wouldn't have been drinking that milk. And I obviously am a huge proponent of raw milk. But that I've still yet to this day, from any person that's against raw milk, I've never once heard them bring up anything close to that. They always just bring up the fact that it'll kill you and it has diseases, which you can still potentially get it, but the conversation's always there's risk with anything. You can
Right.
still get E. coli from pasteurized milk. You can still get all kinds of diseases from fresh vegetables as that continues to happen in grocery stores, as there's always recalls.
We're
You can
more
literally
likely to
just
get struck by lightning than to get sick from raw milk.
now that you say that, it's probably true. Especially if you, then that's another thing too, is we've outsourced all of our responsibilities. If you actually take personal responsibility and take 20 minutes to go visit the actual farm and do your due diligence, you're not going to get sick. And that's the whole point too. And to me, that's another reason why the government forces that on us is they know it's taking away autonomy from them and adds more sovereignty to us. And
Right.
so that to me is why it's not just about raw milk. It's about self-sovereignty. That's why I'm so huge on all of that. We deserve the freedom to choose between raw milk and pasteurized, especially now in modern technology. Now we have refrigeration, now that we have the trucks to transport properly, now that we have the proper testing. Because Mark McAfee from Raw Farm, I've had him on my podcast twice now, and he just talks about his whole process. The moment they milk the cows, they immediately chill it. They have on-site testing. He found a raw milk institute. And so you have all these things going on. And on top of, why the hell would a raw milk farmer go through the whole entire process of all of the financials it takes to, build up a dairy farm,
Right.
having all the testing, all of that, just to make people sick? That makes no
Right.
sense. They're
Right.
not going to do that. And so I don't know. That's why I always just say go visit a farm or ranch.
Right.
Compare what you're sold and told online to what you see and hear and talk to in person, because I can guarantee you it will change your mind in a lot of different ways that you don't expect.
Right. Well, one thing I love is on your website, you have basically a list of topics or questions to bring up if you do have the luxury of meeting a producer or a farmer rancher. And I think that's super important. I'm lucky enough where in my line of work that I am, I talk to a farmer, a rancher, a producer every single day. And I have the ability to go somewhere and shake the hand of someone who's feeding me. Shout out to Back to Nature Farms here in Fremont, Nebraska. But one of the things that I love, so like out of all the questions that you listed there, go through some of them. What do you think is, if you were to rank them, or what's super important to know, what's going to differentiate that product versus what you'd get, elsewhere?
I'd say the biggest things is just the process how they go about everything, from um, the feeding schedule and what they actually feed them, to are they getting sunlight, to the sanitation requirements. I mean, you should also just trust your gut intuition too whenever you see something that might that might look like that's just really nasty conditions. I would, try to question that and
Yep.
their motives. And then also how do they handle the animals when they're sick? Um, I would say those are the most important questions to me.
What are they
And then
eating?
also, yeah, yeah, definitely. And I would say the sick aspect too would be curious to see how they go about because that is a very tough problem.
Yeah,
And you always hear the words of just like vaccines and antibiotics and how, especially in the more confinement areas, they pump up the cows with all of that. And so, do they do any of that type of stuff or go a different route? That's a very important topic to really discuss. And then also, if there's any questions or anything to where the farmer or ranchers kind of gets mad or dismisses, that's also a sign in itself.
absolutely. I know that if you took a standard American and you took them to a confinement operation for livestock, and then you took them to a farm where they were pasture raised pigs, or look at that, they had that choice. I think that they would 100% of the time, in my opinion, would go and source their protein from the operation. Just those cows, those pigs, chickens, whatever it might be. I know that that they have one bad day their whole life. They're not there. It's a stress free environment. They're out there getting sun, like you mentioned, eating high quality food, forage, whatever it might be. I'll take that over a CAFO piece of pork anytime.
Oh, absolutely. And then you try the taste too. That's another thing that I've talked to on my podcast. It's to try to convince people who have never bought from a farm, have never talked to a farm. The whole taste aspect is something that should really, really harp on
Mm-hmm.
because that was something I never experienced until I was 27 was true pasture-raised meats and then trying to compare that to the grocery store. And there's no comparison at all. I was floored with how different the taste was, how juicy it was. So I'm in Austin, and there's a new grocery store called Eat Radius, where Kevin, the founder, is incredible, and he sources everything as local as possible in the surrounding Texas, essentially area, and most of it is regenerative. And I just remember having a peach. I ended up eating pretty much the whole bag of peaches within the next 24 hours because I just never experienced just this juicy fruit. Like I've had good peaches, but it's hard to describe. It literally
Right.
makes you speechless with how good it tastes.
Right.
And it makes me sad the fact that we've lost that because half the time, again, I was flying back from that conference and I remember buying blueberries at the airport. I bought 2 packets of them. Not a single one had any taste. I threw away the second one because it was just, we've grown accustomed now to where a lot of the fruit doesn't even have any taste. And
Right.
you have no idea how old that fruit might be, where it's from, all of that. And it's pretty tragic because
I say it all
then,
the time. Regeneratively raised fruits, vegetables, animals, whatever it is, the flavor profile alone should make you switch. And then
yeah,
how all those things were raised, and the different inputs that are put into it are going to be far better for you than that from, I guess, just, the standard American diet that we're fed. Um, yeah, it's so, yeah, that first bite you get out of something that's different is like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be, right? This is, and we know that we're, when raised a particular way, whatever it is, it's going to be, the nutrient density is going to be there. It's going to be better for us. We don't have to eat 8 oranges to get the value of one that's raised regeneratively.
yeah. And it's just with the fact with the whole ultra processed food talk to or having all the food like products, not even food in grocery stores. Because I grew up on the standard American diet. I mean, my breakfast was always Pop-Tarts, cereal, garbage. And then I remember I'd come home, drink 2 sodas a day, literally every single day, chips, cookies.
Right.
And that stuff is very tough to break. It's a
Very.
very tough problem because a lot of the times too, it's mentally related to where it's a form of escapism or trauma, but then you're also chemically changing your brain. And
Yes.
so, because for me, after my brother died, that was a very tough problem.
I bet. Yeah.
I was emotionally eating a lot and eating a lot of junk food. But then once I worked on the farm, my diet was 100% on the farm. I never once thought about junk food because everything I was eating was absolutely incredible. We were having pizza, but it was homemade bread from the local Amish community with the produce from outside and from the fresh meats that yeah, it's
Right.
9 day difference. And so that's another tough problem and why I truly believe that the root of all of humanity's problems is the disconnection from our food. Because when you take a modern kid, I'm pretty sure nearly 65% of their diet is ultra processed food.
Yep.
And so they have no idea what they're missing, and the most parents have no idea either. And it's just you rinse and repeat essentially. You're teaching all of that to your children, and then that's why you see the fact that I think it's nearly 20% of kids up to 18 has non-fatty alcoholic liver disease now, and it's just like what the heck?
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, you take a look years ago, the cigarette companies, tobacco companies made the shift, and then all of those companies bought up the processed food companies and installed the same tactics that they use to make the cigarettes addictive to folks to put those into food. So there literally is it changes you chemically inside to want more, and then they don't even hide it where it's like I bet you can't eat just one. So you got that going on, and it's you wonder you drive around where I'm at in different from community to community, whether it's rural or in the city, you see a difference in what the makeup of the people in those communities are. I think one of the hard parts that is if you're in a more condensed environment, if you're in a big city, that it's hard to be more connected to where your food comes from. And that is definitely an issue on how do we get more people in that type of environment to break free. Another thing too is if you can't, a lot of people don't either have the space or the resources to go out and buy a share of a particular animal, or they'll take a look at what it might be in terms of the cost. But if you weighed all of the costs associated with buying from a farm directly and housing that meat or produce or whatever it might be, it's going to cost you less in the long run. I'll die on that hill, that's for sure.
No, I completely agree. It is a tough problem with the cities because I'm in Austin, and fortunately, Austin is, I would say, compared to other bigger cities, there's more types of folks that already are aware of, where your food comes from, and especially your regenerative agriculture. But then I think of whenever again, you're in an apartment in a high-rise city your whole life. That's why I go to the raise awareness aspect because when you tell somebody that when they're 50 or 60 to go visit a farm or ranch and that's all you tell them, they're just gonna be like, cool, that's not gonna do anything.
Right.
But then maybe you talk to them about, the Mod family or just any type of story. That's why I'm so story focused and why I'm gonna do this road trip. It's to me, sharing stories is the most powerful way to get people to care. That's why I don't want to get too political, but that's also why the left goes about that on social media. That's half the time they try to get people behind them, they do stories. It works. And so how can we do that in the context of food and farmers and ranchers? Well, that's sharing their stories because their microphone was stripped away years and years and years ago. And not only that, then that microphone changed to people who don't even farm but act as farmers. And so
Right.
because that's another I've talked about on the previous podcast. This is not one thing I thought I was going to have to be pushing back to, and that was influencers to
Right.
where they have now latched on. Because now modern society has changed a lot to where you can have your own personal brand, and that's like your new business. And so with Instagram and TikTok, for example, there's just a massive wave of new influencers to where, they essentially just speak on things, and that's how they have amassed a large following, and then they sell whatever product. And so that's becoming an increasingly bigger problem in the agriculture space
Yes.
because they'll just make these general blanket statements about XYZ, and then people will latch onto that. And then who does that screw over? The actual farmers. And so, for example, if someone made a post on saying chicken health or all chicken is a health scam, which a lot of chicken is bad, especially in America with the CAFOs, and now they've genetically modified to breed these chickens in pretty much a month, and it is horrific. But then who does that screw over? The actual pasture-raised farmers around this country who are trying to go about it the right way and breaking their back to do that. But then now they're seen as these CAFO farmers, and so they're not going to get the support. And that is really infuriating because the whole reason that person even posted that was to get as many eyeballs as possible on their profile to
Right.
shill whatever product.
Right.
And so that again is
I think
very
it goes the other
challenging.
way too. I think there's a lot of people that got behind like the Maha movement that, they'll say these things like you said, like a catchphrase or latch onto something to help sell their all natural supplement.
Yep.
And know that there is an audience behind it. But then you talk to that person and they would have no understanding of anything else besides, what that the one phrase that they're using. And then these people, it's unfortunate that they're the people that end up having an audience with people that are making laws,
Oh yeah.
or policy. And when there needs to be more people that are on the ground getting dirty, to have those conversations. The problem is that a lot of those people that would be beneficial for that side of it, it's hard for them to get away from what they're doing in their livelihood, to spend a few days in Washington D.C. And you know that a lot of the people that are, the whether it's a blue tie or a red tie, um, those people aren't spending a whole lot of time on the ground themselves visiting different operations around the country. But
Not at
that's one
all.
thing is, you'd posted the one, and it cracked me up, is there's the one gal who was on there basically saying that the all Wagyu beef is terrible. I've seen that gal before, and it just cracks me up that she. I mean, I don't think she like. I think she means well on most of the stuff that she's talking about, but that's a ridiculous commentary from her.
I wouldn't even argue that she doesn't mean well because I know multiple people who have tried her program that they came out worse. And to me, it's just a
Really?
huge, yeah, it's a huge ego fueled. That's my whole problem with the influencers is it turns into a big ego boost. I mean, it is hard because I cannot imagine to where some of these people grew their following to where I mean, she has 1 million followers. So
Right.
I try to give grace in that regard, but then also it just turns into a whole ego fueled thing to where now it's just how
Right.
how polarizing can I be?
Right. Right. It's yeah. As we talk about advocacy and education and bringing awareness to certain things, is that there's a lot of crap that you need to sift through to find out what is actually, what's what. We don't, it's tough that, and then people will live in a very short attention span cycle that they'll hear
Yes.
one thing and they'll latch on to it, and then they'll base their entire personality off of it almost. Um,
It's an attention economy, and
yeah.
that's why I'm doing this road trip too. So I'm taking a 5-month road trip around America, visiting farms and ranches, for my podcast, but again to continue sharing stories and education because we're in a massive attention economy to where now everything has essentially gone the TikTok route to where you have 10 seconds,
Right.
you have 2 seconds to hook somebody, and then it goes to the next video, and it is very challenging, and it's part of the game now.
Right.
You have to essentially play part of that. And so how can I play a part of that, but then also try to get across my mission of education? And to me, that's doing this road trip, visiting these farms and ranches like the Mod family, being able to share those stories, and then having good, essentially high quality production to try to catch the audience's attention. But then also that's why I'm saying, okay, I've worked on a farm, I'm learning a lot, and so I know a lot more than the average person, but I don't know
Yeah.
hardly anything in the whole big picture. If I sit next to Will Harris, he'll run loops around me. And so that's why I'm doing this trip too. It's, hey, I'm going and visiting the farmers and ranchers. We're sharing this stuff.
Yeah.
Now you can learn for yourself and then also maybe go visit a ranch or farm yourself and really start thinking about where your food comes from because we're just bombarded constantly from everything on whether it be for your food, but then just we're bombarded with information constantly. And the last thing I want to end on that, it's very hard for the older generations to understand. That's one thing I always noticed with the whole like the younger generations don't want to work, this or that. And that's a very complex problem. But one of the problems is the fact that a kid is handed a literal supercomputer at a very early age.
Right.
And there's science behind the fact that this makes you addicted. And so it's very hard to try to understand that these people are bombarded with propaganda their whole lives.
Yeah.
And so it's again, that goes back to my root of disconnection is, or the root of our problems is our disconnection from our food. Because if we take these families, if you take yourself to a farm or ranch, you have no idea what you're missing. You will see the connection of where your food comes from and how that works with nature. And then the food comes to you and just the whole circle of life essentially. I don't know, man. I continue to go back to that, and it's truly life-changing going to visit a farm and ranch and talking to the people, and then having the actual food that nourishes your body rather than the garbage Franken foods that,
Right.
make your brain feel good but make your body feel like shit. It,
Right.
yeah.
You can sense, like you said. I mean, you eat something good, you feel like a superhuman, almost immediately. And the adverse side of it is that you eat something that's just draining, and you end up on the couch, and then it just snowballs from there. Um, so you spent a little bit of time in your life working at a farm, and then I saw something that you had posted where, or maybe it's from another interview or a podcast that you had done where you had done some work at the farmers market, and going through there, and you said it was really fulfilling. And correct me if I'm wrong, but meeting the people that were buying the stuff that you guys had there. Um, what was it like working there, in that time that you did spend on the farm?
Yeah. So what's cool is this road trip, the very first place I'm visiting is actually the farm I worked on. It was in rural Pennsylvania. So this was the fall of 2022. Again, this was about 6 months after, really learning the term regenerative agriculture and just immersing myself. And so they did farmers markets Thursday through Sunday, and I eventually became the farmers market guy. And so I learned a lot about farmers markets, the good and the bad and the ugly, because it's a good way for new people to actually, go and to actually talk to an actual farmer rancher. But the downside is it can turn to a lot to where the farmers and ranchers, they get some financial support, but it's overall they're not getting nearly as much as they should. So I'll take, for example, we did a farmers market that was about an hour away from Pittsburgh. And so it had a really good community. And it was every Saturday. You'd have to get up about 4:30 a.m.
Mhm.
You drive an hour to get there. Make sure we get there by 6:30, 6:45 to set up for an hour because it starts at 8. And so you're already exhausted by the time that starts. But what's really
Right.
cool, like, I mean, I'd be exhausted every single time, but I'd also just be fired up as soon as it would start because just talking to everybody was really awesome, especially for certain products that you had. So the farm I had worked on, they had really awesome shiitake mushrooms. And I just remember everyone would rave about all of that. But then on the flip side, the fact that it was so early and we'd be so exhausted and overworked from the days previous, there'd be times to where we might have forgotten something to pack. And I remember one time we forgot to pack. So they have a small greenhouse that grew ginger. To this day, the best ginger I've ever had. Nothing even comes close in grocery stores, but it was a higher ticket item essentially. They're probably the most expensive thing to sell. And there's one time we forgot to sell that, and this is the market that sells that the most too. So not only did you just miss that, but you missed out on the best sales day for that. And for a farm who doesn't do direct to consumer online and it's
Right.
all local, that's very, very tough. And I remember just seeing the stress of the farmer as soon as we got there for that realization. And so there's just little things like that too.
And then people miss out on it.
Yep. And then
Yeah.
people miss out on
Yeah.
exactly. So farmers markets are a means to ends, but it's also becoming also a challenging aspect in itself because in big cities it can be co-opted to where
Right.
whoever owns that they make the rules, and then there's others to where some of the vendors literally bought from a previous grocery store and they just marked it up. But overall, I would still say that if someone is looking to actually go meet a farmer rancher, that's a great first step because it's a very non-intimidating way. Because this is also why I'm going at it story focus is it's a very intimidating thing if you're 50 or 60, or even if you're 20 and you've never spoken to a farmer rancher. We have our all preconceived ideas about what a farmer rancher is, but it's like the whole out of sight, out of mind aspect. It's intimidating. So a farmer's market's a great way to try to take that first step to actually meet a farmer rancher, talk to them, actually see the food, and you can talk to them about their whole operation, how they go about it, and all of that. And so overall, I still am a huge believer in farmers markets. The last thing too, I want to add, it's weather dependent too. That's a huge aspect because I remember one time we did a farmer's market. Well, actually happened twice. Another one in West Virginia. It's again another hour drive. We set it all up. It poured down rain the whole entire time. And so not only is it pouring down rain, you're trying to avoid your produce getting soaked, you're getting soaked, but then you're getting no sales. And so that's just essentially a wasted day. And so how can you make up for that? It's very tough from a financial standpoint.
Now, in an event like that, where if you go and you don't have the audience, what do you do with that the harvest that you have that you brought with you?
You just got to take it back to the farm.
Yeah,
That's it, essentially. You guys got to figure out a way to sell it. And if you don't sell it, you just essentially eat it.
eat it or
Yeah.
feed it to the animals.
Yeah.
All right. So the core of me, I'm a car guy, and I've seen a video recently of your rig in which you're going to be traveling around the country in, and I think it's awesome. And if I'm savvy enough, I'll try to maybe share a picture of what you got here. But at least we'll talk about how to see what you have going on. But you got your whole this mega truck going on of sorts. Explain it a little bit.
Yeah. So whenever I was thinking about that, I knew that I was going to get some type of Sprinter van. But then I was thinking long term about this because so I am a news media company now. And if I want to be a legit one, thinking big picture of all of that, I knew I'd be on the road a lot. And so thinking about the terrain of America and wanting to visit every possible state I can and all the different farms and ranches, you need something that could, you know, traverse through all of that. And the
Right.
Sprinter van probably could, but I just saw that truck essentially, and it's a Ram 5500 with this gigantic truck bed, I guess I don't even know how you would describe that. It's essentially a truck RV.
Yeah.
And so it's enough space to get me and my videographer around and being able to hit all the spots that I really want to. And so I'm really excited for that because then next year I'm gonna get that wrapped up in Regenaissance. So then you can definitely tell when I'm a coming.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's I mean, it looks awesome. I'm jealous. There's been a few nights where I've slept in the back of my truck or my Jeep when I've been out, and you get to certain areas around the country if it's a little bit more rural where you might not be able to find a place to stay. So you're either running the risk of driving super tired, or just find a place and post up and take a quick nap. But you can pretty much do that anywhere with that rig that you got going on.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing updates on the road from what you guys post. It's super cool to me. Make me think. I've thought about the sprinter route or something along those lines, just to make it a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
It looks like you guys will be fairly comfortable on your journey. So when are you leaving?
Next Monday. So July 7th.
July 7th, and then up to Pennsylvania. Give a you mentioned it to me before. Give a
Yeah.
little idea of what your route's going to be.
Yeah. So I'm based in Austin, Texas. And whenever I head out, essentially going straight up to the Northeast, I already kind of messed up on my trip planning because one aspect of all how difficult it is to plan this big of a trip for agriculture is most farmers and ranchers can't plan this far ahead unless you have a massive operation to where you have to have that help. So I already screwed up in the sense that I'm not seeing a lot of New York, upstate New York, and other spots, but it's all good. I'm going straight to Pennsylvania to the farm I worked on, and then making my way up to Vermont to hit an awesome maple syrup farm, and essentially zigzagging my way down to White Oak Pastures in Georgia. And I have that scheduled for mid-September. Once I do that, head out west. As I'm doing that, making a couple stops along the way. I plan to spend all of October in Arizona, Colorado, Utah, all of November in California, and then the first 2 weeks of December in Oregon, and then that will wrap up the first trip. And essentially next year, I plan to just do North and Midwest, all the area I don't hit. And then essentially, yeah, these next 4 years, pretty much doing a lot of traveling.
That's awesome. You'll be happy that's when you'll be in Arizona. I lived there for 12 and a half years, so it was probably the best time of year to stay out there.
And that's partly why I did the trip I'm doing too. And
Yeah.
same for like doing because I plan to leave next summer again for the North and Midwest, is I'm trying to avoid nasty weather like that wherever I'm at.
Sometimes this time of year it's unpredictable around where I'm at in Nebraska, and as you've seen the weather that's been hitting all around here, it's been pretty dicey. But overall, I mean, I think what your mission is, what you have going on, and raising that awareness, and education, all of that for all the eyeballs that you can reach is pretty powerful, and I appreciate it. I know, shoot, I've been following for a while now, and um, leaving comments on certain posts, and there's been a few that have sparked some conversation, but I'm pretty heavy handed with some of my beliefs, but that's for another story. But one thing, I guess kind of we'll stop on this topic, but is some of the posts that you've put out there, and I think you've spoken to it a little bit, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that some of the things that are going out there, say it's in Georgia or North Carolina or North Dakota, with the liability shields that are being out there, um, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, that some of these companies that are going out there and asking for liability protection, that just makes them, they can wash their hands with anything. What do you think about all that stuff?
Pretty ridiculous. In like North Carolina, I know they're pushing back heavily,
Yeah.
and for that and raw milk, because they're trying to outright ban raw milk in North Carolina too. Just heavily corrupted. And I know the pushback worked for the uh the chemical spray liability, but they're also still trying to be very creative in their ways to deceive the public. I need their so Yesteryear Farm, and then I forgot her name. I think it's like Dr. Alec. It's Yesteryear Farm, and then they always partner up with this one woman who's really posting what's going on in North Carolina, because that's another thing is why I have this brand. It's we need all hands on deck, because so there's everything happening federally, but then there's so much going on regionally, and there's so much happening statewide and locally. And so wherever you're at, the people in the government can find ways to really essentially do the corrupted things they want to do for like immunity for glyphosate. It's a massive problem. And so fortunately, more and more people are, waking up. More and more people are starting to try to help out like her, because she's dedicating a lot of her time, I think most of her effort, to help out with this in North Carolina.
I
But
think
it's,
I saw something where she drove out there to North Carolina when
yeah,
when it was going to be on the floor, and then there was some shifty stuff that was going on where it was like number 19, and then they said they were going to take it away, but then reintroduce it as number 17
yeah.
in part of that
It's
bill.
it's a constant battle. Like
Yep.
that's why I'm saying knowledge is power, because they, when I say they, it's just the powers that be, whenever they're trying to do things like this, get very creative. But that's because they have the means to. Because with a farmer rancher, they're not just a farmer rancher, a lot of them are carpenters, mechanics, plumbers, veterinarians,
Right.
family, the father, husband, also trying to, take care of the community church, but then also have to be a businessman, a marketer, and a lawyer, and now all this. There's so
A
many things
biologist,
going
a
on.
chemist.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
insane. And
Yeah.
so with the fact that only 1.5% of total Americans are in all of ag, not just farmers and ranchers, just all of ag, the people in the government understand that. And so they have the power to get away with so much. And that's why they've been able to do this for so long. And that's again why I have this, is that I'm trying to wake up people so I can find people that want to help out, that want to do the independent journalism, because I report on a lot of news too. My newsletter and my Substack, I'm constantly updating things, but I have zero bandwidth on my own too, to where it's becoming very challenging to try to stay up with everything,
Right.
and it's just nonstop. Um, and then to me, that's also why like the whole political thing is, a lot of the things is just trying to distract the human population from what's going on, so
It's
they can
definitely a part of
enact
it.
whatever they want to pass.
Right.
And so it's a never-ending battle,
Yeah, they
essentially.
ring the bell, they put something up here and then slide something in, underneath
Yes.
it when no one's paying attention, or they'll do it at in the middle of the night when they think people aren't paying attention.
Yep.
Just like recently with the stuff going on out west, in the public land sale, and you see Senator Mike Lee tweeting, basically saying that everyone who's opposing this is being fed lies, and he's tweeting this at 1:42 in the morning, his time. So it's there's a lot of stuff that's going on. My biggest concern is they keep saying that the liability shield that's going that that they want to pass state to state is that they're saying that it's a pro farmer bill, pro farmer legislation. It's like, well, if the giant agrochemical companies cannot be sued for what their product has done to people, and the farmer then uses that product, and someone downstream of them or downwind of them ends up getting sick, and then that person can no longer sue ChemChina,
Yep.
they're going to then attack the farmer who's just trying to raise a crop and help feed his community. And then it's going to put him out of business or her out of business. So it's to me, it's laughable that they say that it's a pro, it's not going to eliminate the use of any of these products. They can still use them, but they're just, if they needed if their product was so safe, why do they need a liability?
Yeah, why do they, and then also need to buy billboards everywhere to try to say that
Right.
without glyphosate, we're toast,
Right.
essentially. Yeah,
Right.
it's pretty tragic.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Ryan, I don't have it. You got any final thoughts or final words?
Hmm. If you can, yeah, just shake the hand that feeds you. It's really hard to put in words to the potential of what you're missing. Taking away from just like the whole food aspect, just the actual relationship aspect with the farmer rancher can genuinely be life changing.
Yep.
And then as you're developing a relationship, who knows where that leads to? That's the whole thing too, is you have no idea where this leads to. I mean, for me, I had no idea it would lead me to Regenaissance, but I will never forget, because even before I worked on that farm, I visited some spots in Colorado. I'll never forget visiting my friend's ranch in Colorado, having his beef from his with his farm fresh garden. The taste of those meals, I fight every day because of that. It's so tragic where our food system's gone and how we've just lost ourselves because of that. And so that's my final thought is, yeah, just shake the hand that feeds you.
Well, I think one thing is with the landscape that's out there is, people always say that we need to feed the world, but I think what the most important thing is that maybe reel that in a little bit and let's focus on the the community, and then grow out from that. But I think that at that rate that then that it'll spread and more awareness that helps from anybody that wants to talk about it. I'm all for. Oh, it's funny. Before I ever even reached out to you, I started putting two together. I actually have had
Hell
this
yeah.
for a while now. I'm surprised. I washed it this morning. I'm surprised it stayed as white as it has.
I love that.
It's one of my favorites. It's funny. I wear it to the gym a lot, and I get some colorful looks from some people, but I appreciate it. It's always fun. Um, oh well, let's see. Why don't you give people so you can find you on all forms of social media on the Regenaissance and your
Yeah, and
website. What's your website?
it's just theregenaissance.co. And I would say, so I also have a Substack, as I was mentioning, to where it is all news related. And same with my newsletter. I know people plug newsletters and it can be a lot of marketing. Mine really isn't at all. It's trying to update you on everything that's going on and that's been going on. And then lastly, go to my YouTube because that's the one thing that I'm going to be really sharing everything out whenever I
Beautiful.
do these road trips. I mean, it's going to be all of the podcasts, the farm tours I'm doing, other educational videos. There's going to be a heck of a lot that we'll be doing for the foreseeable future. But thank you for having me, Andrew. This was great.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Thank you so much. And maybe after your little rip around the country, we'll have to catch back up again. And I told you, in one of our messages that anytime you're up in around here, well, man, I'll take you some places, but also the open invite to come and take a look at our farm up in Minnesota. And
Yes,
take a look at what we
absolutely.
have going on there. A lot of research, a lot of good things going on in the world of corn. Um, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Thank you. We'll see you later. Ryan, thanks again.
Thank you.